Welcome to this week's QuickBooks Enterprise Deep Dive webinar. My name is Kat Roskovics, and I will be your host today. We are going to be talking about employee tips and how to record those in QuickBooks Enterprise, how we get that information from outside systems that we might be using, and then also how we can track it inside of QuickBooks Enterprise. So before we get started, a little bit more about Fourlane. We like to call this our 4 uniques. So we are the #1 QuickBooks Enterprise team. We have 8 of the top 100 pro advisors on our team for this year, and I'm one of them alongside several other of my colleagues. So we're really excited that this is what we have for this year. We are experts in ERP systems and QuickBooks. So we have, we're value-added resellers for QuickBooks, NetSuite, Xero, and Acumatica. So we try to dispel that myth that people are outgrowing QuickBooks, but when the time comes, we can help get them ready to go into other softwares if that's the right fit. We're experts in both accounting and software, so while other firms may specialize in ERP, but they don't understand the accounting side of it, we understand both. We're also a strategic partner for change management. So what that means is that we help empower your team with the new processes that we're going to be implementing so that you can make better decisions based off of the reporting and data that's provided as a result of those decisions. So today we're going to cover some setup of how to set up employee tips in QuickBooks Enterprise. We're also going to be talking through transactions that are recorded as a result. We're going to go over some reporting as well. And then I also wanted to remind everyone, we have on October 4th and 11th, the CPA Academy will be hosting What's New in QuickBooks 2024. Our CEO, Marjorie Adams, will be presenting that webinar. The session is free, but you have to register at CPA Academy website, which is cpaacademy.org. The QuickBooks Enterprise Deep Dive Series will take a break, so we won't have this on October 4th and 11th, so that folks that typically attend that will be able to attend that What's New in 2024. We'll include that registration link in our automatic reminders in October so that you do not miss those events. So let's get into our employee tips payable. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have QuickBooks set up to receive that information. So kind of the process steps for that. So I've just got a sample company file open here. It's got, you know, very high level chart of accounts. Your chart of accounts may look, you know, different than what I have here. As an example, you probably have a bank account. In fact, let me go ahead and create one of those real quick here. And then we've got some other accounts for things like food inventory. I did set up an employee tips payable account as well. So that account will be an other current liability type account. What that means is that any funds that we have that we receive through those outside systems from customers that are leaving tips for our employees through whatever, you know, system we may be using to track that, you know, Toast or another similar, you know, restaurant software. When we get those end of day reports, we'll have a breakout of those employee tips payable. So I've got an account set up for those. And then we also have, you know, an income account set up for, you know, food sales. We may also have bar sales. I'm just tracking those all through one. And then of course our regular expense accounts, in addition to, you know, some accounts for food purchases, merchant account fees, etc. So that employee tips payable, oops, again, When I created this account, right, I just went to new account. I named that account. I put a description in here as well. And again, the key is that that's going to be an other current liability account. Now, if you are using payroll in QuickBooks, we've also got some payroll items as well that I set up. So if I come over here and I've got just a test employee in the system, so I've got, Jane Smith in here. And on her payroll information, I've just got wages, so what the hourly rate is for that. And then I also have an earnings item called tips, and you can see that that does not have a rate because that will have to be filled in, on her individual paychecks when we're paying out any of those tips. Okay, so typically from clients that I've worked with that are in the restaurant space, they are using another system, right, for actually processing credit card payments through for, customers that come in and eat, right, or have a drink at the bar. So we're using another system for that. And then those other systems will typically have an end of day report that'll give us a breakout of what the earnings were for the day and how that broke out into those different categories. Sometimes we may have, more extensive lists. There may be departments in those other systems. So we may have, appetizers, catering, food, beverage, dessert, right? We may have all of those different kind of categories set up in our other system, and we'll be entering in some of those transactions. I did also go ahead in my items list. I've got a couple, right? So if I had, just bar sales and food sales, that's an example from that outside system, I would have those items set up. Now I've set up bar sales just to go to the account food sales. Some folks will also have, bar sales pointed to its own specific income account. And then also, so I've got food sales kind of set up the same way, right? It's pointing to that food sales income account. And then I also have tips, and tips, we're going to point that to that other current liability account that we created so that we can record, right, the monies that are coming in from those employee tips, but that's not our revenue, right? That money is going to be paid back to the employees. So I'm just going to say okay here. And then let's get into recording a transaction. So let's see. Let's just pretend that I was recording our sales for, we'll just say the 18th here. And if you have multiple locations, you could utilize different customer jobs. So I'm based in Cleveland, so I just have a Cleveland location here. But you could have different customers set up for each of your different restaurant locations, if that makes sense for your business. Another thing that I've seen is also, clients using the class list as well. So they can kind of run their locations side by side when they're running a profit and loss. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I just have a customer called Cleveland. Then we would have, recorded in, and again, we're going to be going off of that end of day report or summary report for the day, whatever it's called from that outside system. We're going to just be recording a summary sales receipt inside of QuickBooks. Now you could also record this on an invoice and then attach the different payment methods to that invoice. That's completely fine. For this demonstration, I'm just going to be using a sales receipt. So let's say we had, 2,000 in food sales, we had 500 in bar sales, and let's say we also had 500 in tips. So this total here would represent the total from my report from my external system. Now, if there's any sales tax implications, like in the state of Ohio, I think food is non-taxable as an example, but any beer or wine or liquor sales would be taxable. So those items, when you set those up in QuickBooks, you could also have the tax rate as well, so that you can, properly record sales tax. That sales tax amount could also just be line itemed on to the individual sales receipt if that makes more sense. But for this demonstration, we're just going to pretend there's no sales tax. So we've got tips, we've got bar sales, and we've got food sales. So our total, sales for the day, right, for 9/18 is coming in at $3,000. So let's take a look at how that affects some of our reporting. So if I come in and I look at profit and loss standard, and I'm just going to run this by day so that we can see how that looks. Let's see, the first one I have is actually on the 16th. So let me change that date. So we can see what we've got for each day. So the 16th, right, we had 1,200 hitting food sales, 2,400 hitting food sales on the 17th, 2,500 on the 18th. And if we're wondering where the rest of that is, if we go ahead and run our balance sheet report, and I'm going to run that for that same period, so the 16th through the 20th, just customize this. We'll do this one by day as well. So what we can see is that employee tips payable balance, right, is accumulating based on those employee tip amounts going in. So if I say from 9/16/2023, we're going to see we started with the 0 balance, and then from those sales receipts that were recorded, we've got to a total of $1,250. All right, so now that we've got the employee tips accumulating, when it comes time to process payroll, I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to go to my employee. And this is also where that external system that you're using will come in handy, because when we're looking at our other current liability, now I've just got one employee set up, Jane Smith. So if we're pretending that she's the only server that we have at our location, which we probably need to hire more because that'd be a lot of work for one person. But we would be able to see for a week or 2 weeks, whatever our pay period is, those tips accumulating for that period of time. So, and it looks like I've got 2 receipts that are the same day. So let me just adjust this one here. We'll make this one 9/18 so that we have one for each day. Okay, so those tips are going to be accumulating, and I've just got this for, the 16th through the 19th. We would also, based on our payroll period, potentially have a summary sales receipt for each day within that period. So we want to make sure that we get that recorded in QuickBooks first. And then whatever the total is for that payroll period, right? So if our payroll runs the 16th through the 29th or the 9th through the 22nd, whatever it is, that we also run a report from that other system. Usually they'll have an employee tips report that we can run that'll have the breakout not only of what the total should be for that period, but also the total by employee. That's important because when we go to write checks, right, or enter our payroll, or if we're using an outside payroll provider, like ADP or Paychex, et cetera, we want to be able to properly report what tips are payable to which employees so that we can make sure that we're allocating those correctly. So I'm just going to come in and let's let's see, let me go back to my employee here. And let's see, let me actually just go up to write a check. I don't have payroll all the way turned on in here, but let's just write a check to Jane Smith. So if we were, let's pretend, right, going back to our account balance, we have $12.50 in here. If we were processing payroll for that period and the net total that we needed to pay to Jane Smith was that $12.50, then when we go and write her check, let's just say her, actually I'm going to put it down here on our expenses. I'm going to have her employee tips payable is going to be $12.50, and then whatever I had set up right on my payroll for her her wages, I would have that also broken out. So, you know, state of Ohio is $2.13 an hour. So let's just pretend she worked 40 hours. I would have that going in as well. And I'm going to actually date this for, let's say it was for the 22nd. We'll just pretend my payroll period is, you know, the 9th through the 22nd as an example. So because we have that employee tips payable account set up as an other current liability account, of course, we may have other sales summaries coming in, right, for those days. But if we're pretending that one that's on 12/22, that check that we wrote on 12/22 is for the tips that we collected through the 19th, then we can also reconcile this account. So we should be able to show that the checks that we wrote out by employee match that report from that outside system broken out by employee. And then we would also be able to reconcile that account. So I'm just going to go here. I'm right clicking and I'm putting reconcile. And let's see, that check date was the 22nd. And our ending balance when we're reconciling kind of these, we call them clearing accounts, right? Because it should net out to zero. Whatever we collect in employee tips payable will at some point be paid out to employees. So I'm going to reconcile this to zero. And then I can then check off the tip amounts that I have from my daily sales summary receipts that I was putting in. And then that is going to reconcile against those checks that I wrote out. So then we can always then run a report that shows what we still have as outstanding. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reconcile now. And then I'm going to record one additional daily sales summary receipt just so that we can see how that looks on our report that we can set up. So let's see, this is for the 19th. I'm just going to come in here and duplicate this sales receipt. You know, again, you could also use that pop-up just reminded me, right? We could use memorized transactions as well to show, you know, double click that memorized transaction and fill in the appropriate amounts. That also helps, you know, make sure that people aren't having to manually key in all of those items, potentially miskeying an item. It just kind of gives them a form to fill out. And if there's a line item on there that maybe we don't have any bar sales on Sunday, as an example, we can just either zero that line out or just right click and delete that line from QuickBooks. So here, let's just say we had 1250. I'm going to change this to 250, and we'll just say that was a really good day for Jane. She had 500 in tips. So I'm just going to say save and close here. And then similar to other reports that we've created in previous demonstrations when we're talking about things like deferred revenue or prepaid expenses, a report that I would recommend setting up and memorizing is a report that shows me the uncleared tips, right? So that total should always match to the total that's on my balance sheet if I run it for that same day. So I'm going to create that report now by going to Custom Reports and Transaction Detail. I'm going to filter this for that account specifically, right? Employee tips payable. And I'm going to change my dates to all. Now I'm also going to add an additional filter for cleared equals no. And then what we'll be able to see is that accumulated balance, right, that's in that balance sheet account is $500. And this is the version that I memorized, so it doesn't have a to date. So I usually will add that to a client's icon bar. So I'm going to add that to icon bar, and I'm going to call that employee tips payable. So that way it's right up here on my icon bar. And again, if you ever need to free up any real estate, you can customize your icon bar. You can delete a couple of things that we might not need up there right now. So I can quickly get to that report. And then if I go and run my balance sheet report, and let's just say I'm running it for, I'm doing my month-end process. So let's say I'm running it for 9/30. I can see that I have employee tips payable of 500, and that reconciles to what I have on my custom transaction detail report. So we could use this report here as kind of a sub-schedule when we are, you know, proving out these balances on our balance sheet. We reconcile our, bank account. We have a report we can run for undeposited funds, but we're focused on employee tips payable today. So we've got that report set up right there. And then as additional tips accrue and we have payroll transactions that we're recording to reflect the amount that we're paying out in tips, we would see those getting offset. Okay. So then future QuickBooks Enterprise Deep Dive courses, we've got a nonprofit topic is going to be what I'm presenting on next week. Then we've also got the What's New in 2024. And as a reminder, if there's anything specific that you would like to learn with these courses, please feel free to reach out and send in some suggestions. We're always looking for ideas. And thank you so much.